Hi folks, welcome to the workshop for week 4 of IP Law, and this one's called Fair Use Has a Posse. Now this is the first of our 2-week focus on copyright law. Now we've done the introductory part of the course, we're going to go into a couple of weeks of specific issues on each area and things that are particularly interesting. I mean, we could spend a whole semester on each of these different areas of law. So it's a case of finding stuff that's representative of the whole, but also is things that are interesting to talk about. And fair use is certainly interesting to talk about. It's something that's become a very contentious issue recently. A lot of copyright holders and lobby groups would like to see it abolished altogether, but it's part of that continuum that we've discussed in this course, the importance of retaining those rights of the commons and the rights of the whole. And it's the rights of everyone to fairly use the property of others. Not to, copyright is a limited monopoly, we've mentioned that before, and it shouldn't be locked down by one person. Anyway, the Electronic Frontiers Foundation started a bit of a meme around fair use. Fair use has a posse, following on from the Andre the Giant meme, which some of you will be no doubt aware of, and if you're not, it doesn't really matter. So fair use is the international term. It's in the United States legislation. Australia, we have a term called fair dealing, which is a more limited version. And it's deeply ironic that in an era when we quickly step up to the plate to change our laws to be consistent with American laws, we've never actually fixed this part. We've never actually fixed fair dealing. And that's possibly because it is more controlled and less, it is more in the copyright holders' interests and the lobby group's interests than the fair use definition. And the case law is somewhat ambivalent on what the difference is, but the feeling is fair dealing is much more in line with commercial rights and commercial interests. Now, if you have a look in the study guide for this week, you'll find that the term fair dealing is spread throughout the legislation. It's all over the place, and it's used in lots of different ways, and none of it's terribly consistent. And in fact, this is one area in which we've been talking about law reform for quite some time. So it includes things like educational uses, use in news media when you're reporting on something and you use a little clip of something, using criticism and review, again showing a short clip. Parody is a new one. We didn't used to have that, but you can use derivative works there. And the big ones in the cases, which we discussed last week in terms of technology, time shifting and format shifting, that the courts have actually, at least the American courts, have been quite activist in extending some of these rights. Now, there's a huge grey area, and I've added some extra readings, just short readings on transformative uses that's relevant for this week's workshop, because people will often say, what about all those images that use like a Star Wars stormtrooper in a different context and things like that? Well, there is some slip room here where you can use transformative work based on others, but unfortunately it's not very consistent in the way the law's applied. We also have a quick section on moral rights. It doesn't exactly fit here, but I've put it in here because it's relevant, and it also, I think, also sets out some areas where fair use is limited. Particular uses of attribution. So it does set some boundaries around that. But moral rights are statutory rights. They're also public international law rights that say that even no matter what you license or no matter what rights other people have, there are some core rights that all creators have. And the key right there is the right of attribution. So we need to know this stuff. Don't think it doesn't really fit all that well. It doesn't, but I think it's going to be relevant for some of the discussion that we have in the workshop this week. So the workshop this week is really around the idea of fan fiction and fan art. It's extremely contentious. On the one hand, we've got the spectacularly poor public relations policy where in the early 2000s, when the first Harry Potter film came out, Warner Brothers sent threatening letters to every small child in the world who'd put Harry Potter fan fiction on their websites. And they may have been within their legal rights to do this. That's not the only question that's relevant here. But they certainly copped a lot of backlash over it. And it's really forced companies to actually think about their fair use policies and to actually think about to what extent do we allow people to have to create fan art and fan fiction, and to what extent do we want to be overt about that. And I think the tendency now is to be a little more overt and to be a little more specific at saying these things are permissible, these are things that you're allowed to do, but these are also things that are completely impermissible. Okay, so the workshop for this week is really about thinking where the boundaries of the legal rights are, and then strategically, where do you go? So at one extreme, as I said, we've got the Warner Brothers situation where they copped a lot of flack for being they weren't really litigious because it never went to litigation, but they certainly sent a lot of solicitors' letters to terrified 10-year-olds. At the other extreme, if you look at sites like Etsy, you'll find today that Etsy is full of basically unlicensed merchandise. And as we've also discussed in this course, particularly performing artists earn more money from merchandising than they do from selling albums and songs. So if you go to Etsy and search for, say, Justin Bieber, and you probably wouldn't want to do that on your own computer in case someone ever found out you'd done that, but you would often find a whole lot of Justin Bieber merchandise that people have created that is probably very close to being pirate merchandise. There'll also be things there that are, that are sincere fan-created items, and it can often be difficult to tell the difference between those things. And sites like Etsy spend a lot of time and a lot of energy trying to make those distinctions. Is this just someone who's created something because they enjoy someone's work, it's using someone's IP, but it's using it in a way that's fair, or is this someone just trying to make money selling a whole lot of stuff that's unlicensed? So there's a lot of issues to discuss here, and one of the first steps, I guess, is to think about what sort of fan art context we're talking about. Obviously, there's a lot of things around sort of geek culture, a lot of things around sci-fi and fantasy, but there is also a lot of stuff around music and musicians, and even people like the Jersey Shore people, shockingly enough, and people creating derivative works based on their personality rights, for want of a better expression. So it's going to be an interesting discussion this week.